Thank you all participants for your joining. Let us start our today's first session with RM Deshpande sir again. As we know that he is having numerous case studies and every case study is very good example for us for as a perfect surveying practical. So let's take benefit of his expert knowledge. Now Deshpande sir will explain us one more case study from his experience. I request Deshpande sir for continuing this session. Good morning, Deshpande sir, and thank you for joining with us. Please take over.
Good morning, everybody. Yesterday, we had seen how total station can be used for land survey and different applications. Today, we will continue with that. The sessions what we are conducting, especially I am conducting, is basically a sharing of the experiences what we encounter at various sites. What are the requirements? What are the situations? And how we find a solution to that? And then how the prepared drawing, can be put to use, and how long it can be used as well. I mean, it is not just that once you do the survey, that drawing can be used for a long time, different stages of the project, even from right from beginning to the end, or even after the end of the project. And the utilities of total station remain unexplored. I mean, you can say it's up to your imagination to determine how to use the total station. Today, I will share you a drawing which will give you a little glimpse of how total station can be utilized. We have done survey for Pune Traffic Police. Now, why Pune Traffic Police would be requiring survey agency or the use of survey? Now, you know that the traffic control at every road junctions nowadays is becoming a hell of a job. Then you need to have a proper data, the coordination and synchronization of the, what you can say, traffic signal systems. So again, there is always a possibility whether we can have any expansion in that particular road junction, whether the islands or this dividers, whether they are properly placed or not, whether they are affecting the flow of the traffic. As we normally see when we do a traffic survey, we try to maintain the record of the vehicles and category of vehicles passing through that particular area on hourly basis, say from maybe early in the morning to other than for 24 hours. And then you can work out the traffic intensity of that vehicles, how which vehicle passed from that way, and likewise. Now this particular survey, these drawings are there to be used by the Pune Traffic Police, and always as well as the traffic department from Pune Municipal Corporation. Now, how the roles are entangled, I will tell you. If you see these drawings, I will just start from the top. If you see this drawing, what we are collecting is everything between the roads. So the plot boundary, now you can see here is the plot boundary, the compound wall, the other side this is fence, then the footpath, then the divider in between, the trees if there are any, the chambers. Then we come to this junction, then there is a traffic island here which is having some statue. Then again the same details all around that four lanes, five lanes which are going there. Now the interesting part is this. You can see the table. Now we have in discussion with these people, the traffic department as well as the Pune Municipal Corporation's traffic, Pune Police Traffic Department and Pune Municipal Corporation Traffic Department. Now they wanted a data of that along with the drawing, which will give you the existing phasing and timing. Now, what does that mean? Unfortunately, we didn't have any data for this particular thing. But then I will share you another drawing. Just a moment, which will give you this data. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Just a moment. Sorry, I'm just trying to get a drawing which have this data. We have filled up that data actually. It's placed somewhere. It's not there. I'm sorry, unfortunately, I don't have that data. But then these are the columns which shows uh, this will give you the direction of the signal, and below that we are mentioning the timing of that signal. So how much time for that particular signal is given? Suppose, for example, suppose you are coming from here and then you are turning to the, you have to turn to the right. Then the signal which is in front of you, for how long the signal for how long the signal is operating, and then likewise for all other sides as well. And then we have to work out the total phase cycle time, how much total signal timing is there, then the type of the signal, whether it is an led or conventional light, and likewise then again whether this invert, whether it is have any inverter facility, so that in absence of MACB failure, if there is MACB failure, then the inverter can be put to use. And what is the countdown timer? Because now you can see earlier, when you see that the traffic signal is operating for say 30 seconds or 15 seconds or likewise, you also get a countdown timer from the other signals, that this signal is going to be activated in say another 60 milliseconds or 90 seconds and so. So this is that countdown timer, whether it is the facilities available there. Then who is maintaining that particular signal, entire setup of that signal? So that was one part. Who has installed it? Then whether this signal, now this is also interesting thing. You know, whether you can see the junction here, but if this signal is synchronized with the earlier signal on all the other sides. So that was one thing which we have taken there. And then the remark, if there is any specific remark for that particular road junction. Now you see that this is a good combination of survey drawing and the data. Now you can see all these things integrated in the GIS, the drawing and the data. So likewise, even at a very small level, even if you don't have all those facilities of say DGPS or GIS, you can still maintain these records. Now we have seen a good about 500 to 600 road junction booklet with the Pune traffic police people who have all this data at a certain point of time. Now these data were not updated. Now again, as we discussed yesterday, these kind of data are useful for budgeting, for planning, for how you can phase out. If you want to do the automation of these road signals in say almost every junction, and how you can automate that, whether the position of signals is correct or not, because as the things start developing and the development takes place in a particular area, the road width increases, the traffic density increases, then you may have to change the signal position as well. Even the phase timing and all these data can you can what can say you can change that, modify that if required, and then prepare a new drawing which will form again the basis for further record. So the survey is for at many can say many situations, it is a timely at the intermittent time. You have to do it for every say frequently over a say period of year or two or something like that, depending upon what kind of survey and what kind of data we are going to use for that. So this is an interesting example of what we can say the traffic junction survey. Now these things can go on can continuously go on every year, and there is a lot of opportunity which has created for, you can say, the jobs for surveyors, because then there is no dearth of survey. Now you can see this particular drawing again here. Now, as you may be aware, and everywhere, whenever the road development takes place or the road widening happens, you tend to change the road levels with a new gradient, or if the road asphalt road is to be turned into concrete road, then you need to have the levels and what would be the final level of that. So here you can see we have done the survey of a road. As you can see here, this is the road edges, then this is the center line of the road, the tentative center line, of course, and the structures which are adjoining the road. Now these structures are important to know. We know the location of these structures is very important, as because when you want to expand the road, how far they are touching that. Now this is a physical record of the structures. When a road, in the DP plan, when the road widening and all the things are mentioned, most of the times they are not concurrent with the ground reality. So these locations, if a road has to be developed or a stretch of a road has to be developed, then you need to have a survey which will give you the readings of that particular existing road level and how up or down you want to raise that level. So these kind of surveys are also required for the road contractors, for the municipal corporations, because then this is going to give you a very good and accurate quantity for that particular road. Because then you have this in AutoCAD drawing, you have the total road length, the BOQ, and everything can be prepared based on this. So how important are these drawings, survey drawings? You will understand when we see these kind of data being put on the drawing. So as I mentioned earlier, it is again a technical document basically. I mean, any survey is not just a drawing; it's a technical document. So we'll move on to some other drawings as well. Okay, now I will. So one more interesting survey we have conducted last year. I mean, I would have preferred the photograph. This is a survey we have done in NDA, Pune. So there is a they want to put up a statue of Thorle Bajirao Peshwe within the premises of this NDA, and then for that there's a reference of the statue is a Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj statue. This is the position of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj statue, and this is the proposed location for Thorle Bajirao Peshwe statue. Now you can see here, this is the top platform. Okay. Now what are the levels we have shown here? You can see the level at the bottom. See, this is the level at the bottom, a step higher here. Then almost this is the same level. Then this is the top of the statue here. I mean, base of the statue on the top of that mound. Now, what the levels we have taken, you can see the various levels. The horse tail bottom level, then the horse front foot right leg. It is the front foot is raised above the ground. Then statue left leg bottom level. Statue right leg bottom level. Horse left leg in air. The bottom of leg as well as the where the leg is bent at the knee level. That level we have collected. Then the horse belly bottom level. Horse back top level. Horse ear top level. Statue, the shirpes, or this what you can say, the crown of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, top level of that, and the sword which is holding in his hand, the top level of that as well, top edge. So you can see all these levels we have collected. Now again, these things can be possible with the measurement as well, but when you want to relate that in the drawing with the position, then you have to have such kind of survey to be done, and then this gives you a fair idea for the rest of the people who cannot really imagine or cannot really visualize how the things are there. So a photograph attached here with of that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj statue would explain everything what we have collected here, and then the position, how they are placed, and when the other statue is to be erected, so then what should be the levels for that base and everything that can be determined from this statue as well, because they don't want the Thorle Bajirao Peshwe statue to be a bigger than Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj statue. So that was a statutory requirement for this particular statue erection. So here you can get this thing. Why we have taken this list for the same reason. Even now you can see here that this is the length of that top bottom surface on which the statue is erected. So this is again an example of how survey can be utilized, total station can be utilized for these kind of what can say uh, uh, this type of data collection. We would call it a data collection rather than a survey. A data collected and represented on the drawing. That is how we look at it. Now, again, as we have seen yesterday about the drawing of a tree survey. Now, here also we have done this tree survey and a table. Now, as I told you yesterday, these things are required for auditing purpose. You can see the table here, the tree number which has been there put on the tree and put on the drawing as well. Then this is the approximate bolt diameter. At times we have given it, now this is in meters, so it has to be in either centimeters or inches to understand it properly, because everybody doesn't understand these type of decimal things and in meters. And the approximate height. Though now where this is, we have said now in P, that is they are the newly planted trees, very new trees which I mean which we are hardly maybe upon a meter or so, and they have little bit grown up. This 2 meter, 3 meter tree or 6 meter tree. Now you can see here these things when they go to this environmental department for their audit. These kind of numbers are put up. Then this thing the now we have mentioned this prepared a block and in nomenclature it as tree coconut. So it's a coconut tree. So this is again shown in this legend as well. Now tree coconut, you can see it here. One more aspect of doing the drawings from the survey we have done is the use of layers. I will just show you how many layers we have used here. Now you can see these are the layers. Now these are the mandatory levels from the AutoCAD, but the compound wall, dimension, divider, GI sheet. The GI sheet we have taken the other time. This survey we have done twice. So this is the original and this is a new GI sheet. Gate, then the structure, thick edges, and then every tree which has been there is been put it here in the layer. Now, why this layer business is required? Because then the drawing can be very well distinguished. Now, if you want to see or measure just the number of trees for a particular, you can see you want to see the Christmas tree or coconut tree, then you can just switch off all other layers, open that layer, and just count the layers. So you get a count of each type of trees what are there in the particular drawing. If you don't get, you can get the total number of trees as well by the numbers, but the differentiation or the category wise or the name wise, the different trees can you can obtain it from the drawing from these layers. So this is how the layer business layer is actually been used and very effectively used. Then as you are aware, most of the times the drawing what the architect gives, they are in almost always in black and white drawings. In survey we have to give a color drawing. So this is not something which is you can say I mean a training sort of a thing, but these are the things which makes this drawing more and more useful and more presentable. And even the drawing can be read by a non-technical person as well. So this is one of the survey what we have conducted for the tree survey. The frequency of these survey has increased over the last year or so, because the environmental requirements are all there. So these kind of surveys have increased. As we have seen yesterday about the setting out jobs for different sites. Now this is a particular site. It's an industrial shade, and now you can see the details from that. Details in the drawing. I will just relayer on. Now in industrial shade setting out, you can I mean this can be more useful as compared to even the residential building. Now you can see here this is the this is the this is the footing. Then we have given these points at a different, even outside the footing, so that the excavation margin and everything is taken care of. Then these, as we told yesterday, here we have not marked those circles and those points, because now these are represented by here by the column number. Here what we can do, we have to give the setting out for first for the footing, for the PCC, then footing, then in the industrial cases it is the pedestal which is then cast. If the pedestal is cast, we treat it as a column only. Even we call it as a RCC pedestal on which the base plate and the foundation bolts or the column bolts would be mounted. Now those again that starter and those points are marked, and then when you want to fix the base plate, this base plate position also can be marked along with the bolt. Now, as you are aware, whenever this this base plate is to be put on the top of the pedestal, it comes with the it comes with first you have to mark the bolts. Once the bolts are concreted, then only the base plate will be fixed on that. So, and then the nut would be fixed likewise. So here, these are the points which are marked. So you have to take maybe a base plate and this bolts, and then the position of the base plate and the bolts is fixed on the top of the pedestals. It is tied or welded properly, and then the casting is done. So for industrial purposes, up to these points, the survey setting out work can go on. Then they don't have multiple floors. So here for all these columns, these things happen, and these setting outs can be done. And then the further job, once these bolts are in position, then we don't need what you can say, the further assistance for the survey. Then the structures can come up, because nowadays they are all precast structure, so the structure can come up. Now we can give the coordinates like this: 1 2 3 4. Now these coordinates are representing the column corners, and okay, sorry, footing corner for that column. So we have to mention that coordinates for footing corner, and so that they represent that column footing, so they are placed accordingly. Now, as we have seen yesterday, I told you yesterday that we normally for a footing we take a marking of say plus and on the edges of the PCC. At times, people want to want these coordinates as well, the corner of the footing block marked on the PCC, so that they can fix up the footing box accordingly. And this, so one thing you must understand here, that whenever a surveyor is going to any construction site, he has to work in close coordination with the site engineer and a contractor. So whatever the services are we are offering to these people, they should be put to maximum use. So you always need to discuss with them how they want these points. So it is not a very standard thing that okay, whenever you go to site, you have to work out only these points and then do the setting out. It's not like that. So whenever you want to do any kind of setting out, you have to discuss and have a close coordination with site engineer and the contractor as well. Why contractor? Because his people, his team of carpenters and fitters would be working on these markings. So how comfortable are they for these markings? That is something you need to discuss with them. That is one aspect of aspect of interaction with the contractor. The second aspect is how the engineer wants to check it. So if the engineer wants to check it for the distance between every two footings, or he wants to check it from particular fixed point within the block of the building, so we have to ask them how they are going to check that. How it is convenient for them to have a foolproof check of the points you have set out on the site. So these things, they can be once they give their inputs, then accordingly you can work out the coordinates, and then you can do the setting out there. Because you have the machine and you have the facility to do that particular job, doesn't mean that you have to do it on your own. You have to have a very close coordination with these people. Then only it will help them, then only it will boost their confidence that okay, these things are really useful and they are more accurate. They are definitely accurate, but when they see it on the ground, then only they will realize it and visualize it, and it put them to a very comfortable position. So for these kind of setting out, especially the columns and the footings and all those things, one more thing along with the setting out comes with the setting out is that whenever you go for a setting out, or whenever these settings out are happening on site, the checking of these points should happen on a daily basis. So if my person or my survey team goes on site and they do the marking of say these column centers, and they are marked, and they just left without checking. So yeah, and if there is something wrong, if that coordinate is not properly fed, or if the machine has been slightly disturbed and the coordinates on ground are not there properly, then if the contractors or the engineer complains to you after a day or two that okay, the points what you have set out on the other day are not correct, then everybody is at a loss. Everybody is a loss of time, loss of confidence, loss of interaction between the two. So to avoid that, if they do it on the same day, then you are sure that whatever the points had been marked are correct. If not, they are corrected there and there itself. So whatever the work has been conducted on a particular day is has not gone waste. So this is something what we must understand. So whenever these kind of jobs we do, we have to ensure that the checking is happening on a daily basis on site. As at many sites, when the total station is in use, it is used for all days. I mean, it is used every day for a continuous development. It is used for every day to maintain the record and to take the work forward. So if this checking is not done and you are just going forward marking the points, then the whatever is happening behind of the earlier day's drawing, I mean, you're not in a position to understand whether that is correct or not. The engineers and the contractors have a tendency to believe that since you are using total station, everything would be accurate. But you must remember the total station operator is also a human being. He is also subject to some kind of error. He is also subject to making some kind of mistake. The only thing is that without blaming anybody, we have to correct that mistake on time and there itself, so that the work is smoothly continuing. So these are the few things. Now, as you know, now these things are not part of the academics. But whenever we are discussing or whenever we are teaching total station and its utilities to the students, for every type of work what they are doing, you have to take care of few things. And those things, when people go out, even if the engineer or a diploma student who is not who would not be working as a surveyor in future, he should understand these things. He should be aware of these things, so that whenever a surveying agency is appointed or is there on site, he must understand what kind of work he have to get it done from these people, what kind of checks he have to see from the survey data what has been generating. Just because the total station is there, you cannot take things for granted that okay, everything would be accurate and there would be no need to check. Whatever is given by the surveyor is good enough and we can just go ahead with that. It's not like that always, though it is the case many a times, but it depends on the quality of surveyor and his experience as well, and what are the emphasis he is putting on during the survey is equally important. So when we when we tell the students or when we teach the students about a total station, if say we tell them that okay, we are doing a topographic survey and the total station is to be used, then as for every survey, the first stage would be doing a recce of the plot to understand how many minimum control points you can put up on site so that the accuracy of the survey is maintained. The less number of control points means less possibility of error. You can say it that way. And then this recce has to be done. Then immediately, even before going for a survey, he has to make a site visit, understands what are the need of the survey, see the site. If there are any constraints to the site for working, if there are thick hedges, high grass, or what you can say thickets where you can't really enter and can't really take the levels, you have to tell to the client or the concerned engineer that this site should be cleaned. Now, why I'm making a very clear word clean? We need to clean the site, not of trees. We don't want to cut trees. We just want to clear the thick hedges, the high grass, so that the topography or the land becomes bare and it is visible to the naked eye. Now, why it is required that whenever we are doing a survey and we collect the levels, we should not miss any features which are just gone hiding in below this high grass or thick hedges. Now, whenever a development starts on any site, they always clean the site. So it should not so happen that you have done a survey with these thickets and high grass on, and you just didn't understand the topography below your legs, how the ground is profiled. So and you miss few of the features. So the straightway interpretation for the other person is that the survey is not correct. It's wrong. It is definitely wrong. But then nobody talks about that the site was not clean or it was not given a very bare and clean site so that you can see the topography. Because whenever you prepare a survey drawing, you take the contour drawing to the site, you try to check the topography or general features of the site, then you should be able to see those on ground. So unless you see them on ground, you cannot pick them up while doing the survey. So for a topographical survey, what you can say that you need to understand the purpose of the survey, and then you need to understand what are the site constraints, get them cleared, and then only you can do that. At many times they are not sure about their boundaries, but unless you have a plot boundary, you cannot really close that survey. So as you can, as we study in the books, they call it as a survey which has no boundaries and just the contours are drawn like that. But for whenever we do it for a piece of land or a plot, we need to have a definite boundary for the plot so that the contours are properly placed within that bracket. And then always you have to take some levels beyond your plot, say about a 5 meter or 10 meter corridor. Now, why these levels? Why we need to take these levels beyond our plot? It is just to understand the continuity of the topography, whether the same topography has continued beyond the plot as well. Sometimes it also happens that if one plot is developed and the other plot is raw, then there may be a level difference, a huge level difference between the two plot levels. So you need to understand those levels. So whenever a survey for the plot is done, it is not just plot that we have to survey. Along with the plot, we have to take the adjoining roads as well. Even if the roads are on all four sides, we still have to take the roads on four sides. We cannot say that we are not given the survey for the plot for the roads because we are surveying only the plot. No, it should not be like that. You have to do the survey of the adjoining roads as well. Now, why they are required? Because whenever you want to develop that plot, to do the planning on the plot, you should know from where you can access the plot. What is the convenient location to access? Also, when you are entering into the plot, whether you need any kind of ramp, whether you need to raise the land to certain level, whether you want to excavate the land to come to that level. So all these details you can get from those surveys. So essentially, every time when you do a topographic or a detailed layout survey, you should have a boundary, some area beyond the boundary, which will give you continuity of a topography. And again, the adjoining roads. Even if the road is far off, suppose you are plot in the middle of a land parcel, and then there is a kacha road or not a permanent road there, and then the main road is about say 100, 200, 300 meter beyond your plot. So you still need to show that your plot is about say 200 or 300 meter from the main road, and then whatever the access you are having, you are whether that access is legitimate or not, that is something you have to, when you show it on the drawing, you have to tell the client that you must check whether you are getting access to that plot or not. I mean, you are having a plot and somebody will give you access, just forget about it. Nowadays it's not going to happen unless you have to pay money for that, or for the approach and for the right to approach to your plot. So these things comes out when you discuss about the purpose of the survey, how what why the survey is required, what are the requirements from the architect, and how the surveys are placed. So again, whenever we teach the students about the total station surveys, you need to understand and tell them what are the details they are going to collect in general for a particular site. So as you can say, in every BOQ, there is an attempt description. So for survey also there is an attempt description. What is the attempt description for a topographical survey? We call it as a detailed layout and contour survey for a particular plot, which will include, now these details what I'm telling you, I'm just following you, telling you, are the details which are standard requirements of the survey. So this will come as a plot boundary. You know, the plot boundary can be in form of a compound wall, a fence, or just pillars, or just four corners of the plot. So we have to collect that boundary. Then the internal roads, if there are any internal roads are there. Then the big identifiable trees. Now, trees is something of a discretion here. So sometimes people need to know each and every tree standing on the ground. Sometimes people want to know only big identified trees, and they want to cut the rest of the trees which are hardly of any girth of that, whether the trunk diameter is less than 4 inches or say 3 inches or whatever the norms are. They can simply cut that tree, or they can just replant that tree somewhere else. So you need to show them when we say big identifiable trees, then they can specifically say, okay, only show these trees, don't show other trees, or otherwise you have to take each and every tree. Then from then again, I will continue at the plot boundary. Then the big identifiable trees. If there are any structures within the plot, we have to collect the, sorry, footprint of the plot. Now you understand, whenever we are collecting details like structures, man-made features, which we normally call it man-made features, such as structures, light poles, electric poles, telephone poles, and likewise, or the roads, internal roads. So these are man-made structures. So for a particular structure, the constructed structure, we have to take the footprint only. We don't have to go into elaborate details of the drawings. So a footprint is good enough. Why the footprint is good enough? It just shows the position of that structure, and you can just mention whether it is a ground structure or ground plus one, ground plus two structure, and the floor level of the ground floor. So again, that level, whenever you are taking the benchmark, these are again different types of temporary benchmarks established on site. So the floor level of a structure is again you can treat it as a benchmark, because then if it is not going to be demolished, it will remain for a long time and you can always refer those levels. So likewise, these are the requirements of the survey. And when these things are done, then you have to say that we are including all these etc. and submitting the drawing with a 5 meter by 5 meter grid, or a 3 meter by 3 meter grid, or a 10 meter by 10 meter grid on a color print and a CD. Now, what are the standard deliverables for any survey? Is a hard copy and a soft copy. So nowadays, because of the last 1 year due to this corona outbreak, we were not even going anywhere. So we were just delivering it on mail, the drawings, bills, everything. But otherwise, for the record purpose of any company or a builder or an institute, a hard copy and a CD attached to it is always useful for them. You can also put these drawings on the mail so that they remain there forever. Because the CD, you may lost the CD if the staff changes, if the management changes, you may not get hold of that at a later stage. But if the email address is there or a website is there, you can just put the drawing on that, so that you're always the drawings are always available for them. So this is how. So whenever survey is done, normally when we do a practical of a total station, we just put an emphasis on the practicals which has been given in the book and something like that. But whenever that particular practical is conducted, what that practical is called, how you can put it in an item description, these are the few things if you can teach, or you can just explain to students, it will help them in understanding when they will give a requirement for a survey. When they are engineers, then it will help them in giving the requirements as well, because it is the engineer who has to give the requirement for a particular survey on site, in discussion with this architect and the client. So these are the few things which we need to address, which we need to explain to students so that they understand these things. So all this, whenever we are doing this practical, it has to be a sort of a commercial assignment. If we're able to do that as a sort of a commercial assignment rather than just a practical, then these aspects will understand this aspect. Now, some students may have a passion for survey and they want to pursue a career in survey. So for them, if they want to know, then they can know about these things. Yeah, even the interaction what we are having now, such interactions can happen on a regular basis, or you can direct these students to a particular surveying agency and ask them to do some kind of internships, maybe for some period, maybe in their vacation, or maybe on Sundays or something like that, so that they get acquainted with the terminology, the process, and the utilization of survey. What we have seen, even though I mean I am also not an exception for that. Even though we have been taught total station, when you go on site, you are fumbling there. You don't know how to conduct a survey on site. So the assignments or the projects what are there for survey, if they are being conducted under the guidance of some professional agency, then these people will understand it better. Even they don't operate it and see it and operate it in between, it also would be helpful for them. So this is how there are few things attached with the survey. We'll just move on to some other drawing now. Again, this is again a survey plan for a chemical company in Chiprun, Garda Chemicals. So these are the details what we normally collect. Now you can see consistently these details are there in every drawing. So whenever the survey is being conducted, whenever the people are doing the survey, so there has to be consistency in collecting the data, in collecting the data, in processing that data, and then we put it on the drawing. Now we must every time understand. So whenever a assignment is being, or a job is being completed, and then the drawings and the deliverables are submitted to the peer, to the required client, to the client, then he should be in a position to understand the drawing very easily. So a repetitive client may understand the drawing, that you are, suppose the layers are constant, the type of layer, the name of the layers, the color combination of the schemes. I mean, these are not just cosmetic things which beautifies the drawing. They're the things which makes the drawing easier to read. So we should always have this approach or view when we prepare a drawing. So even when the survey drawing is prepared in the college, now everybody can operate the AutoCAD. Now you don't do it the drawings manually. So if they want to do the drawing on a, what you can say, on this AutoCAD, then they should also make use of these things. So civil engineering, in the civil engineering department, if a survey is conducted, then we can also take help of a, say, AutoCAD, somebody if is teaching AutoCAD, to understand how the drawing is to be prepared. Nowadays, many softwares are available for preparing drawing, but these drawings cannot be generated automatically using the softwares. We still need to join these points. Maybe few blocks here and there, they can automatically be placed there. But the other things we have to follow. Then we also need to check the data, what has been collected by the surveyor. Now, in this data, as in every surveying operation or different instruments, orientation is one important thing. Orientation is one important thing because then it maintains the continuity of the drawing on the same basis. So whenever we can see here, if they put a station here, say number 33, they have established a station here, taken a backside on 32, and the first thing they should do is to put a station number 34, the next station, because then the machine is least disturbed at that time comparatively. And then they have to put the next station, and they have to maintain the coordinates in the notebook of backside, that is easting, northing, and elevation of 32, and maintain a record of 34. So when these things are, so when a data comes to the office, then the AutoCAD operator, the engineer, needs to check whether they have written these data properly or not, and whether suppose the coordinates of 32 what you have written when you have established a station point, whether they are the same or within the tolerance limit. When you take a backside, that is something you need to check. Once you check that, once you get those things proper, then your survey is correct. So likewise, when the data comes, you have to understand whether the sanctity of the data is there or not. So these are the things which, I mean, these are all subsequent things when you start using total station, collecting the data, collecting the accuracy of the data, downloading the data, processing the data, and preparing a drawing and have that drawing finalized based on the data. So this is how a total session survey proceeds. Now, why the survey has become easier comparatively as compared to the earlier days, that it has become very fast, it has become very accurate, it has become more and more, what you can say, uh, approachable to number of people. Now you don't have to you should not be an engineer to do a survey with total station. As you are well aware that the ITI also holds a course for a surveyor, which is about a 2 years old course, and maybe some little lesser aspects of survey and the working has been taught in that ITI 2 year course. The emphasis in ITI is more on use of the total station. So they are less equipped with the technical knowledge of the survey as the diploma students or degree students are, but they know how to operate. So there is a basic difference. So they are basically not surveyors, but you can say they are mostly machine operators. Now, looking at the increasing requirement of the machine operators, just a moment. Looking at the requirement of machine operators, people have started, many institutes have started this what you can say, the courses, short term courses. So the short term courses can last from a week to about 6 months, to say maximum a year, for this total station, for the total station operators. Now what they have been taught, they have been taught different aspects of total station and how to put it to use in the field when you are going to work as an operator. So his job, as compared to the diploma or degree engineer, is very different. So he has to just operate the machine. So he at times may not understand the requirements of survey, why the survey is being conducted, how it is to be conducted. He may be more equipped than the diploma or degree students, but then he has to make understand the requirements of that survey, why the survey is being carried out and how he want to do it. It's his up to him. But still that time you should tell him that this is the kind of survey we are expecting and you have to give us so and so data. So this is a differentiation between an ITI surveyor and a diploma or degree surveyor. So degree or diploma surveyor, they will be working as an engineer or maybe entrepreneurs for in this field. But the ITI surveyor also can be an entrepreneur. But he essentially has to be a machine operator. So this is how the things are a little bit different. Now I will show you a drawing. Now this drawing is a drawing of a particular building. In this building, they have a requirement of two plans for every floor: a floor plan and a ceiling fan, a ceiling plan. Now, why the ceiling plan was required? Nowadays, many you can see on many sites they use the flat slab, so there are no beams, but there is a column head, what are the different name by they call it, but I call it as a column head. So this is the column and this is the column head. Now to understand or to this particular now purpose of, I will tell you the first the purpose of this particular survey. This building was supposed to be hired from a particular company, from the building owner. Now, when they want to hire this building, about 8 to 10 floors are there. They want to understand the feasibility of the floor plans. Feasibility of the floor plan is how best they can put this floor plan to their requirement. So that was something they wanted to know, and they don't wanted to rely on the old drawings. So they wanted to make these drawings, or I think those drawings were not available or made available to them. So they have to do this exercise to prepare the floor plans on each and every floor. Now, why these ceiling? I will tell you the requirement of this ceiling plan for the rest of the floors. Here, there are no what you can say. These tendons are not there. So this is just the floor. For this is the column. These are the columns. Then these are the same columns, but with the column head. So those two plans are the same plans at different levels for a particular floor. Then when you go for a first floor, now you can see here. So whenever just when the drawing is opening, now here you can see these columns. Also they wanted to know the levels of the floor. So whether this floor has been the floor tiles and all the flooring has been removed properly or not, how much work they want to, how much money they want to spend on cleaning the floor or leveling the floor to a certain extent. So again, this one is the data what they wanted. Now you can see here, these are these red strips. You can see on every ceiling nowadays where the flat slab is there. They have to mark. They are well. You can say red paint marking is there. A paint strip is there. Now they are supposed to be these tendons, I think, which are used in pre-stressed, and you really cannot drill into these area. So why they are shown here, into understanding that you cannot drill along these red lines. You need to drill if you want to have a put up something. Then it has to be between these lines. Now, why it is required? Then, whenever you are having a false ceiling or a services which are going at a ceiling level, then you should know where you can take them. You should also know that whatever the floor arrangement is going to be of the entire office setup at that particular floor and ceiling, they are not conflicting with each other. I mean, it should not so happen that AC pipe or some AC ducting is going right above the top of that particular person sitting below that area, and you cannot really do the false ceiling there, something like that. So they want to understand whether these things are possible there or not. So again, this is a good example of whatever data we are collecting and how the data is put to use. Now, likewise, you can see these are the plans for each and every floor. Now, this the lift position and these toilets and the other ancillary rooms there, they can be of different use to them. It's not very difficult to put them to use. But this is the main floor plate. Again, the floor plate area, what has been told and what is there physically available, whether it is matching or not, as we discussed yesterday, again, that is something you need to know, because again the rates are on the basis of square per square foot, and even for 10 floors, if you even if you save some 100 or 50 square feet, then that amount can be a huge amount per month. So this is how these plans are prepared. So I'll show you one or two more plans like that. Now you can see the plans are almost same, but you cannot really say that unless you collect the data and prepare the drawings. So even if you want to confirm that okay, all the plans are same and with little variation, now you can see we have not just copied these red lines from the earlier floor plan. We have taken it everywhere, and that is the credibility of you as a surveyor, which can be established with these kind of accurate and proper data represented on drawing, data collected as well as represented on drawing. So this is very essential part. Even the terrace plan, now they want the terrace plan as well, again because they want to mount them the centralized air conditioning system, the pipelines and everything, even the solar panels and everything. So they also need to know how the terrace is placed, what are the things they are put on terrace. Sometimes the canteen or the cafeteria sort of things are there on the terrace, so whether that these kind of areas are available or not, so this is something which we need to understand. Then again, we have to give this. Now this is essentially a carpet area, what you are giving here. But again, if you want to see a real carpet area, you have to deduct the portion of columns which we have not deducted. So we have done this for the sake of our purpose, that okay, we have measured this area. So we don't want to go by the carpet area or built up area concept, because everybody try to interpret it in a different way which is suitable for them. So we say it is a measured area, so it is what you can say, it is applicable for my billing. That's it. I mean, it ends here only. So these are again the sort of requirements and the data that we collect for from survey. So as you can see, and we have to what you can say, when we are explaining the to students about the total station, these are the things what we should be telling them, the possibilities, enormous possibilities of, you can say, utility of the total station, how best it can be put to use. Now you see this is an extensive marking for columns, sorry, for plots. See how many points are there. This is again a plot layout, and it starts again with the road. So when you enter into the plot, the approach has been defined. So from here the point starts right from here. So this is the main road and this is the approach. So these are the road points which are marked at a particular distance, say 10 meter, 15 meter or 20 meter, depending again on the terrain, so that the adjacent 3 points, so the 1 point ahead of you and behind of you are visible, so that if you want to do any kind of ranging in between for excavation and all, so you can still do that. So this is how the requirement is, and then these points are marked here. Now again, as we spoke yesterday, once you mark the road points, sorry, plot points, the road gets automatically demarcated. Now this is a very what you can say, curvilinear frontage. So you just cannot restrict yourself to marking of only these 2 points. Otherwise, if you join these 2 points by straight line, you will lose some area here. So you have to have, as you can see it here, you have to have the point in between as well. I'll just now you can see. So this is how, again, now this is again at the as per the requirement of the site, what I am telling you. Now this is a single plot, so you can say I am marking only 4 corners of the plot, but it cannot happen like that. So depending upon the nature of the plot, size, plot shape, you have to determine how many points you have to demarcate on the ground to determine the position of the plot. The inside plots we have not marked because the first task was to mark the roads, and then these points automatically get marked because they are the plot points as well. Now, why these points are picked up and not some random points are taken? Because then you can identify the plot corners from those points as well. So, but the double purpose is served. So here you are saving something for the client, some money for the client, some time for the client, and you don't need to mark these points. This is being this very initial stage. You can see these points at a longer distance. When you're actually doing the concreting or asphalting of this road, then at that time you need to have three or four more points in between those point to these 2 points are points of such locations. So you understand that the requirement again changes. I'm constantly mentioning this point, and there are no you can say standard things that okay you I mean there are some basic standard things are there, but beyond that you have to improvise. You have to see what the site is, what the requirement of the site is, how the site is placed, how the points are to be given, and how it will be convenient for again the person who will be working for that to use of these points. So always you think of the people who are going to work on your points whenever you do any kind of survey. So this is very essential. I mean, you cannot really ignore that and go ahead with what can say, go ahead with the survey just without consulting with them. Now this is a bit different use of these contours we have drawn from Google. At some point of time there was a facility in the Google uh, that no, not Google, sorry, AutoCivil 3D. In one of the versions of AutoCivil 3D, you are able to draw contours from the Google image. So now this particular thing, they have not taken the plot, they have not finalized the transaction for the plot, but they wanted to understand the topography of the plot, and it was not all visible as you can see from the image. Or this is very, as you can see it here, this is all coverage. This is all vegetation cover is there. So this was not possible to go there and do the survey. So we have done it from the Google. Now if you see this, just this is a sort of, you can say, a stream. You can see this line here. You can just see that blackish thing, which is which can represent the water here. Again it is turning in this direction. Now the contours also, you can see the line is exactly following like that. You can see it here, this line, it is following the same, not exactly the same profile, but close to that profile. So this is how you need to check whether the survey what you have done is correct or not. Now, as very rightly you can see here, this area is a plateau on top, and then the slope starts further. So this is a fairly flat area or a gradual slope area as compared to the rest of the plot. And this is how the contours were drawn. And then there's a facility to draw the contours to the scale of 1 to 1000. So sorry, scale contour of 1 meter and 5 meter interval in that multiple. So now it is not available at the feature because they have removed it from the next version, something like that. So this is again the type of survey what we are doing without going to the site. Here again, here again you can see. Now this is something which I will be discussing as a case study on the on Saturday 19th, I mean on the 19th practical. So this is particularly a village map. Now one thing which we also, if you can so when you are explaining the students about, we are teaching the students about the survey work, you also need to tell them about the documents. What are the documents required uh, for a piece of land? As we know, there is a 7/12 extract, then there is a government demarcation, then there are other documents as well. Then 8A form. In Maharashtra, in Pune, we are telling you, in your place it may be a little bit different, but on the same lines it should be. And art, and likewise, there are many forms and documents are available with the government, or how the government is keeping these records. So to keep all these records, whenever a student goes out, then he doesn't understand all this. He is just going by the site what is being shown to him, and just that site, whenever the site is shown to him, he has to do the survey and he has to get back and do the drawing and deliver the drawing, and that's it. So that is one aspect of it, which you can say is a technical aspect. So there is another aspect which is a legal aspect to any land, legal and a technical. Then the things which are going to different type of people. So say if you want to go to the government people or an advocate who will be doing some kind of documentation about that piece of land, he need the legal documents. He is not interested in contours and all those things. And the same vice versa. The architect of the site is not interested in the legal aspect of the land. He has to work on the, because it has been handled by a different department, different people. So whenever we are explaining the students of the total station, this is not exactly just the total station. It is part of that survey that they should be made aware of the legal documents, or how the record for the land are kept, and how a survey using either using total station or any other instruments can correlate those records with the existing land. Now, as you can see here, this is basically, I'm just removing it from here. This is basically the data what we have collected on a particular site, and then these are the two parts. Just a moment, give me a moment, please. Now you can see. Now you can see there are village maps. You can see the village maps everywhere, and these village maps, they are numbered like this. They are either survey numbers or they are either gut numbers. So if I want to purchase a land, say 1016 survey number or gut number, then this is how the land is shaped as per the record. And this is how what should be the area of the land as per the record. And then I am going on site as a surveyor with total station. Then I will be shown some of the points along the boundary. I will prepare the drawing, and then I will come back and see whether the line, the survey drawing, what I have prepared, is having the same shape and size. Now, for every plot, the shape, size, and area, all these three things should match. Then only the drawing is complete. Sorry. Even if the shape is there, but the size is not matching, doesn't of any use. If the shape and size is there, but the location is different, yes, it is of no use. So if somebody shows this land as a land somewhere here, you are not aware of it. You are just not sure whether the land what is being shown to you, it is exactly in the same position or not. So this one aspect is an aspect of survey. When you go out in the field, you have to know, even if not at the first instant, but during the process of survey, during the process of giving preparing drawing, you should know whether you have been shown the correct piece of land or not, whether the whatever being shown is the same piece of land or not. Now, how to find out that? Now, I told you earlier yesterday also, I will be sharing a little bit more elaborate drawing with you, maybe little on the other day, next day rather, where I will show. I will have one drawing here also. I will show you. Just give me a moment. Okay, I will show you this drawing. Okay. Now you can see here. Now this is the survey what we have conducted. This is a survey what we have conducted, and now I want to ensure that this is the same land what we have been shown. I mean, this is the same land in terms of government records, the survey number or gut numbers. So, how to determine that whether this shape exactly matches with that or not? Now, there are other drawings. Now, if I remove these drawings sidewise, you can see this is a survey number 48 and gut number 2. Part of it is, sorry, this is survey number 14 gut number 2, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure what this number is, maybe wrongly placed. This is survey number 48. Okay, and then there are adjoining survey numbers, likewise also adjoining to that survey number 48. These are the parts of the two parts of that survey number. uh, just here, sorry, here it is. Okay, this is how they are placed on Google. Now, when whatever we do, when we have to find out whether you are in the same portion of land or not, you can see this is the village map which we have fixed on the Google, put it on the Google. Now, once we put it on the Google, and once it comes to the Google coordinates, as I told you yesterday also, this is an island, what we call it, as a marker which shows direction of the survey number starting from that point or emanating from that point. So there are 4 points. So if I give a coordinate of this and to the handy GPS and do a stakeout on ground, I should be able to find iron somewhere near to that. Okay, so we have to find this iron and burus, the circular stone formation, and then put it on the Google. Put the same thing on Google and put the village map in accordance with that. Once it is fixed, then you know whatever the land is shown to, and you collect a Google coordinate of your land as well. Now, as you can see here, this is the survey number 48. This is survey number 49. I have to purchase land in survey number 48 and 49. So here, these the survey numbers have three hissa. This is a drawing which shows how many subdivisions are there for that particular survey number. So for survey number 49, there are three subdivisions. There are two subdivisions, and out of that two, one has again two subdivisions. So in all, there are, sorry, four subdivisions. Here also number three. So how you interpret this? This you can say this is survey number 49. So this is 49 oblique 1 oblique 1. This is 49 oblique 1 oblique 2. This is 49 oblique 2, and this is 49 oblique 3. So likewise, these are identified. And then we have to put it on Google to understand the exact position of it. Now, as you can see here, these are getting overlapped. So this area is getting lost because you should it should have matched properly here to along this line, but it is not matching. So that area is lost probably, and then here there is a gap in between. So whatever the area is lost here may have gained here as well. So these things happen when you check the government documents with the when you check two different government documents and try to overlap each other. They never or seldomly lapse, exactly lapse. So this is how you want to we want to what you can see, we want to get the location of that land from the Google. Now how this lapping is done, now you can see here, this is the stream or a small river in the area. So this I have to match with this because these lines or these their alignment, they hardly change. The meandering and all those things happen very rarely, not always. Again, there is this stream is there which is going here but not matching with this. But these are the lines, defined lines of that what you can say, uh, that field there. So this is an indicator that whatever our lapping is correct or not. Again, this line, you can see the shape here. It is just going in between somewhere from here, but this shape is matching, this profile is matching, and accordingly you are putting it on a Google image. Again, here there is a water source, so this is leading to the creek. It's just adjoining the seashore. So this is how you arrive at this particular what you can say location of the plot. So a surveyor essentially so we what we tell people is that you give us a 7 by 12 extract and we will show where your land is. So how we do it, we get a village map for that particular piece of land. We superimpose that land, that village map on Google image in open source, of course, and then we try to locate his land. Then we give him the coordinates for that particular land corners, land parcel corners, and then once these corners are given, then he can go to the site, do the stakeout, and find out whether the land is still available there or not, whether somebody has encroached it or not encroached it, or something like that. The same thing goes for any kind of land transaction where you can say that the land transaction, whatever has been done, is properly done or not. So a survey, total station survey, whenever we are doing at different times of different stages of work, as I told you earlier. So if you want to purchase a land, you need to know you have been given two documents, a government demarcation maybe or a 7 by 12 extract. So how to determine whether we are getting the same land physically? That there are two different terminologies nowadays: land as per record and land as per possession. So people who are not very aware of the lands what they are holding, they may not keep the boundaries very safe, and there is always somebody creeps in and the encroachment happens. So then, when you want to purchase that piece of land, the total station has to be sent there to collect that boundary, whatever has been shown to you, and to understand whether the land, whatever is there, is physically measuring or admeasuring that according to the record or not. Also, as I told you yesterday, you also need to see whether the boundaries as per the record and boundaries on ground are matching with each other or not. The location of the land in normally city areas or in urban area, I would not say city area, I would say urban areas, cannot really differ, as they may differ in the outskirts of the urban areas or in villages where there is not much movement and not much transaction happening, or even the transaction is happening, but people are unaware of their own land, where the land is situated, and they have been cultivating a different piece of land altogether. So these things are very likely to happen. So for a surveyor, it is their job to understand how these things are placed, and whether we are giving the correct location for these people or not. Now, one more interesting drawing I want to show. Now, there is air traffic control. This air traffic control needs to prepare drawing or say for some radius. I can tell you what the radius is here. You can see the extreme points. The radius is 10,500. That's 10.5 kilometers. Now, what this drawing gives you? This gives you the high-rise buildings or structures which may be conflicting with the aeroplane approaching and leaving. So these are all the points collected from what you can say the handy GPS, the GPS. So that GPS are accurate to 3 meter to 10 meter accuracy. So for a building, that much accuracy is good enough. We don't have to have for planes which have been landing and taking off from the airport. 4 or 5 meters hardly matters. So they need to understand what are the positions of the tall structures or tall monuments or the tall hoardings surrounding the airport, and how they are placed with respect to the runway of the airport. Now, here with this as a 10.5 kilometer, The runway is hardly very small. And again, when we because we have shown the north and everything, you can just put a line of runway here and understand how the things are placed. And these are the radius, these are the circles which we have drawn. Every circle is about say 500 meters, a 500-meter circle around the center of the runway, from center of the runway. And likewise these circles are drawn, so you understand, okay, now this Centaur Hotel Juhu Beach is approximately 500, 1 kilometer, 1.5, 2.5, set a radius of 3 kilometer from the airport. So when you want to determine the approaches and the living directions for the airport or the aeroplanes, you should know how whether now you can see in these directions, that is north, between north and west, the whole area is open. So whether you can really take off from that side, or whether you can really land from that side, or even if this area there are hardly any structure within the vicinity of the airport. Now what you call as vicinity is something they are differ everywhere. So airport may have some different definition of a vicinity, maybe beyond 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers or low. So you can see here right up to 9.5 kilometers. Now you can see everything there is in a single line. So you cannot have really an approach defined from these areas. So even if from whenever the aircraft comes from any other location, they have to change their way and approach, as they call it. When they say that this aircraft is approaching, then it is approaching from a certain side. So these can be determined from these air traffic control drawings. Now you can see they have been prepared for number of what you can say, number of airports at different locations. Here also they just wanted to have a very small radius, about say kilometer and a 1 kilometer. So again here they are mentioned, and they are mentioned this is the angle they have mentioned with respect to the north. So if you see one number, where is that one number? So it will be somewhere all along like this angle 113 degrees. And likewise they are mentioned, so there are more than angle, there you can say they are bearings with respect to north, what they have shown here. So the people understand the. Now here also this is something what we have mentioned here. You can see that whatever is there at a 1 kilometer radius, these 28 number. So localizer runway 07. So day night visibility marks are there. So what they have visibility, this is only for the sake of visibility what they have mentioned. So if you have more the runway and something surrounding the runway, you should know whether it is day night marking or night like marking. So again, this is a good use of survey. This is all you can collect even with the total station. This is all you can collect even with the GPS, depending upon what accuracy you are looking at. So this is how things are there, how the drawings are prepared, and how the drawings are put to use. So I would also like to, on a case study basis, when we'll do some case study, I would also like to do a case study right from, say, I want to tell you, it may not be exactly what you can say for uh, this may not be exactly for the total station, but it will be a part of total station, where the total station is involved, and a process where how we have started for a particular project, from defining the land to survey and further acquiring the land and doing it for what you can say, doing it for that final drawings for that and finishing. I'll just share you one more drawing with this is again a company, Lupin company drawing in Pune. They have a research and development facility. Now again you can see this is the green building, what they call it. And the requirement for this particular survey was, again, they wanted to know the green area. Now, as per the new norms of that lead certification, I think, if you want to have a green building, if you want to call your structure as a green building, then that building has to be constructed in a certain way, without taking any material of excavation and other things of your compound, and it has to be merged and merged within your plot. And then it has some facade requirement, light requirement, ventilation requirement. Along with that, the one more requirement is there is the green area surrounding that building and overall available in the particular premises of the company. So you can see here, now that this green area, what actually green area means, where they have put up lawns, where they have put up small shrubs or flowery plants, and where they have put up uh, some lawn and shrubbery only, and nothing else, because these are the trees what are there already there, and as well as the water bodies. Water bodies and green area is something which they want to have on a drawing. Now that area percentage is they have some norms for that area percentage, and whether they only can say this is the green building. So all these structures are, you can see here, these are the old structures, old facility structures. Only this building as a corporate office has been built up recently, and they are calling it as a green building. So again, they have purchased a piece of land here, and then now to have any kind of development to happen on this piece of land, they need to understand the exact availability, exact layout of the entire plant, how the entire plant is placed at the latest date, and how much FSI has been consumed or how much ground coverage has been consumed with respect to the total area of the plot, and whether whatever the new development they want to make, any kind of structures that is permitted as per the FSI rules and regulations, that is something they want to know. So this was the requirement along with the hardscape and softscape area as well. Now at many places, whenever a billing is to be done, say for a particular areas, we have done one total station survey in one of the societies, whether where the contractor has done asphalting of the entire road, internal roads, and again the road was not in the straight lines, and curves and curvilinear was shapes were different, shapes were there, which are really difficult to measure, or even if they measure it, they may not be accurate. So there we have done that survey with the footprint of the structures. Now here what we can combine, we can check with the society people or the contractor that whether if they can combine this particular survey, what is the present requirement, the present requirement is only for the road. Now if the road requirement is combined with the rest of the area, the rest of the details in the rest of the area, that becomes a complete record drawing, record drawing for them, and then their purpose is also served. Now once these quantities are established, then they can be used for at any other time in future, because it's not going to change, and they will say when they want to maintain that, they know it beforehand what is the quantity they are going to consume. Not only they, the contractor also understands quantity, the BOQ quantity, and he can budget it accordingly. He can negotiate the rates accordingly. They can get a better deal. Both the contractors and the society members, they can have a win-win situation sort of thing there. So this is one aspect of doing the survey with the total station. Again, I will again emphasize the point that the compatibility and the interface with the AutoCAD is a very big advantage of doing survey with the total station, because then it really put you to ease, and the drawing you prepare and the details you have taken, so it becomes a complete data. Nowadays, one more survey has been, we are conducting one more type of survey. There are now, as you know, there are societies in any city areas. The builder comes, build the society, hand it over, and then people starts living it, and the further documentation is just left as it is. That is formation of the society, and again form a conveyance deed. When we have a conveyance process of conveyance deed, by which the builder has to transfer all his rights to the society, so that the land becomes society's land, and the builder's rights are being removed there. Now again, at these stages, the society, if the builder has not done it himself, the society, if it happens after a 3 years, 4 years, 5 years span, the society has to do it do it themselves. Nowadays they call it as a deemed conveyance, so it has been initiated by the society themselves. Now, at such times, society wants to confer the area which has been there for that particular, what you can say, for that particular plot. Now, why it is required? Because at there, then when any kind of development has to take place in future for on that particular plot, you need to know whether any FSI is pending, because now the FSI rights will go from builder to the society, and for that they need to check the plot area and distribution of that plot area, that in that plot if they have an open space, if they have an amenity space, if because then you may not be able to take those areas. If you have any road areas, internal road alignment is there, then you also need to take those areas into consideration. So you prepare a drawing with total station for these things, and once this drawing is prepared, then you differentiate the areas as open space area, total plot area, open space area, amenity area, area under internal roads, and then the rest of the plot. And then you can compare that area again with the records, and then you can push forward your proposal for deemed conveyance. So again, in these kind of surveys, or when these the such kind of surveys are conducted, asking, again I'm telling you, the asking the purpose of survey is very essential. At times the society, if you are doing it for a society, the society people may not understand the requirement. They will just say that we want to do a deemed conveyance and we want to measure the area, that's it. So you need to ask them to understand, that they should understand first what are the requirements of the survey, by speaking to either to advocate or by speaking to the architect, and then they can say, okay, these are the requirements, and then you can conduct the survey. Also, when requirements of that survey, now as an engineer, if an engineer, now engineer, when he is learning the subject of survey, so when he goes out after becoming an engineer or diploma student and he goes on site and he has to do a survey for a particular plot, he has to ascertain what are the requirements of the survey. Nowadays, what generally happens, then architect just forward you a standard requirement. In that standard requirement, even if your plot is somewhere in the middle of the city, they will ask you for a nearby river location, they will ask you for a nearby railway station, they will ask you for a nearby airport. So these requirements, whether they are really applicable to your plot or not, you have to understand that. Otherwise, what does that mean? That wherever the location of these things are available, say river, railway station, or airport, you have to go all the way from your plot to collect the location of these points. So this may not be requirement at all. So whenever you say that you have a survey requirement, you design that requirement, you put that requirement forward. You should understand the what is applicable to that particular site, and then only you should what you can decide. You can list out only those requirements, and then only put forward those requirements. It is not really required that every time these things have to be there. If you are well away from this river line, you don't need the HFL marking on your survey drawing. Well, it just cannot be there. And wherever it is the position of those things may not be correlated with your plot. Even if you are kilometer or 2 kilometer away from the river, and you are well below the river level maybe, or you are well below the what you can say, the HFL level, or even at the same level, it's not going to come to your plot. All this water is going to rush to your plot, but there are so many things in between. So likewise, you need to understand the requirements of survey. So because then whenever a survey quote or survey tender is floated, they just say that we require all these things. So you need to ask them and get things clarified. Okay, this is not a requirement. This is, we have just forwarded you a standard requirement. So we don't need that requirement. So whenever we are explaining or teaching the students about the survey, some of these things what I have told you, what I have shared with you, if they are explained to the students as well, then they will understand the use of total station, how it is used, and what are the kind of data is being generated from the total station. So again, so by whatever means you do a survey, Whenever we learn it from the books, we know a certain amount, certain details are getting you get the certain details from the survey, but you don't know beyond that. So to make them aware, to make these people aware, so what the survey, how the survey is going to be conducted, what are the details going to be available from the survey, what are the requirements of survey, how to set the requirements of survey. So these are the few things we should tell students, even if not as a part of academics, but even as a part of practical. So whenever you are giving them an assignment of a population survey, suppose a traverse survey has to be done. So when we call it as a traverse survey, the emphasis is on traverse and accuracy of the control points what we are establishing. But at the same times, if we can just accommodate the other requirements of the survey along with the traverse survey, the students will start thinking, we have to what you can say, provoke their thinking in this direction as to what I can collect from the total station survey, even if the assignment is there. So if you go to site taking a total station and ask them that we have to do a detailed layout of the survey, so what are the things you are going to pick up in that survey? So if you discuss with them, and if they are short of few things, and you explain them, okay, these things also we need to collect, then they understand what they know and what they are about to know, so that it becomes their vision becomes very clear, their concept becomes very clear as to how the survey is to be conducted. Again, when we or you can take a bigger area for survey, so that it may happen over a period of say 2 or 3 or 4 days. So it need not be finished in an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 hours. It may go on for a day, it may go on for a 3 4 days, with maybe intermittently after a gap of 3 4 days, 4 5 days, something like that. So if that way these surveys are conducted as an assignment in every college, then the student will understand that the survey importance of survey and the best utility of a total station. So unless you know the utility and explore the possibilities of using total station, you will not really understand it. How best or how far, how in very different ways, not even apart from a land survey, you can use this total station. It's not just the measuring the piece of land when you do a total station survey. So before concluding, I will just show you new drawings. So this is a recently conducted survey. Now this is again, I'm telling you, this is again the use of total station for what you can say, I will not say a structural audit sort of a thing, but to check the eccentricity of the columns over number of floors. Now you can see here, you can see different colors of columns here. Okay, now if you check the layer, I have selected this bluish color. This is the P3 floor column. Okay, then this is, if you the yellow is there, this is P2 floor column. This is P1 floor column. This is F1 column. Now this is the data which has been collected. Now this just we have put up basement, ground, P1, P2, P3, F1, F2 floor on one another with the same base. So you can see the variation in columns. Now this is very for anybody you can say, wow, this is a very horrible situation. But then, even if it is there, you have to work out a solution to that. And to work out a solution to that, you need to have this data very accurately taken. Now, if you see, now here we have said basement floor plan, that is the architectural layout, and as built basement floor plan overlap. Now you can check it column by column how it is differing. Now you can see this is the as per the layout, and this is as per the ground. So here you can see the difference. Now these difference can be measured. Difference can be measured in x and y direction. So this is how the things are. Now, if you want to avoid that, then you have to have a surveyor agency, a total station all the time on site, and for every column, the marking has been given by total station. So if these importance of total station and utility of total station is explained to the students, then when they go on site, they can they can put it to the management ki, no, we have to do it by the total session to avoid these kind of mistakes. It is generally estimated that about somewhere between 5 to 10% cost of the project can be saved if you use total station properly. So that's a huge cost. For the saving, it's a huge cost. But if you see the cost of engaging total station, it is hardly peanuts as you compare to the cost of the total project. So it is just the lack of what you can say interest or lack of initiative by the management which prevent them from engaging total station at in every stage of the work. Every there is one drawback definitely there, that there is a the dependability on the total station is increases as much as anything. But you tend to learn the things about how to optimize the use of total station at every or at different stages of the construction or any project. You can determine that you can optimize that, and you can even reduce that cost also, at the same time saving the cost of the project. So this is how. Now these are the individual columns. Now I will show you something has gone really wrong in this. I will show you, these are the my one formwork shear walls. Now here you can see, you just can't make out anything out of this. These are the 9 floors right from the ground floor. Now this is the ground floor, what I have clicked. And the ground floors has a network of beams and columns. But from first floor onwards, where the typical floor starts, there this my one formwork has started. So even if using my one formwork has given them such an error. Now they are all attributing this error to this corona outbreak and some lack of supervision and all that. But again, just the point what we have discussed just before. Now here they have different agencies of PMC, project management consultants, the architects, the site engineer, have good number of engineers, number of staff is adequate, but still these things happen. Now these things happen because whenever a total station is being used, it is not checked after giving those points or setting out points. So you will understand to what extent the work can go wrong. As specifically showing you this drawing. This is not just to blame anybody or not. What you can say, how the wrong works are being done in the field. It is just to understand how it can be avoided, how it can be avoided, and it can be avoided before going it out of hand. Now whatever the solution they are going to work out, it's up to them. But this data, we have to show this data. And now this is again, we have just superimposed everything. Now here you can see the data what we have collected. You can, so the when you are doing it with my one form, the aluminum formwork, you are just taking it straight away. I mean the entire floor is cast in a single pour. So you can see this is the first floor. So there is hardly any deviation. You can see it is very well. We have collected each and every point. Whatever the points we have showing here, we have collected each and every point, and then only we have drafted this. So as we go from first floor to say fifth floor, here we have superimposed this. You can see how it is different. Now these are the floor plans and these are the actual positions. You can see how they have differed. Now why they have differed here, again it's a relative lapping what they have done here. If you take this lapping to this point, then you can see that the variation is very less. But this is the variation will appear somewhere else. You can see the difference here. So this is how the work has gone wrong on every floor. And then if you're not using total station and just using the plumb line to take it on the upper levels, you hardly understand the cumulative error it is generating. Now the from first floor, if you see all the drawings together like a flicker, when you see these things on flicker, they are stationary drawings there. But when you just flick it, you can see the action being generated. So here also, if you just flick these drawings put together, you will see how it has deviated from first floor to eighth floor. And for the ninth floor, now they have again brought it back to the position of first floor because of the total station marking. So avoiding use of total station can lead at times to disasters on site. Even if it is used and not properly used, you can get the same results. So you have to work in tandem. You have to work in tandem with the PMC, with the contractor, with the site engineers and the surveyors. And again, you should understand the requirements of that survey. And once the requirements are understand, you can properly brief the surveyor or the respective people that why you are doing this particular job. So just using total station is not good enough. You have to give support for support of all these things. You have to take into consideration all these things whenever you are doing a survey, whenever you are using a total station, and then only you can get good results consistently. And then only the use of total station as an precise and accurate instrument is justified. Other just having the instrument accurate and precise is not justified. So this is how the things stand. So I would request you, if you have any questions, you can please ask me in the chat box, and then I'll answer that. If not today, even after day after tomorrow or whenever we are meeting again. But I would request you to do that.
Sir, one question is already there. Hello.
Okay. How billing of survey work is done? Okay, the billing of survey work is done. Now what we are following over a period of time, now there are two items. One item is of setting out work, and one item is of contour survey. The contour survey, whenever you are doing, you are normally measuring it, or the billing is done in, you have to quote per acre basis. So whatever survey you are doing, you have to quote the rate. Say we are charging somewhere between, say, 1,500 to 2,000 and to an acre. Again, that depends on the, again now again the it's a good question you have asked, again related to the requirements of the survey. So these are not standard rates that you have gone somewhere, you are buying a soap, and everywhere you are getting, you will get that soap for 20 rupees, or if it's a 50 gram soap for 20 rupees and a 100 gram soap for 40 rupees. So it's not a standardized rate. Now why and how these rates are differing, it again come back to the requirement of that particular survey. Now, what is the requirement of survey? Whether the site is a raw site without any kind of development, it is hardly 1,500 to 2,000 rupees an acre, you can say. If it is outstation, then the lodging, boarding, to and fro transport can be charged separately, because you can charge it as per actual and the rate remains same. Sometimes they want to ask you to embed that rate within your quoted rate. Sometimes the arrangement is being done by the client on site. So likewise, the rate increases. If it's a setting out rate, we normally charge it on a per day basis. Say starting from somewhere between 5,000 rupees to 7,500, 8,000 rupees. Now, why we charge it on a per day basis? That the amount of work done on per day in setting out differ from site to site, and it is because the setup at every site is different. If the setup is good, if the labor is available, if the following work is done properly, then you can get good output, because for a survey he only has to mark the points, but the further work has to be done by the other agencies. So if they are not lined up, then your work is of no use. So we leave it. We don't want to do it on a per point basis or something like that. We say my person will come at 9:30 to your site. He'll work till 6 o'clock, and will be charging on per day basis or per visit basis. If it is a small work and it gets finished before the day is over, so it is like done like that. If it's a road survey or a route survey, then it is charged on per kilometer basis. Again, this per kilometer rate will vary depending upon the width of the corridor. If the width of the corridor is say 15 meters, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 meters, or say 100 or 200 meters, the rate will differ. So likewise, the billing for the survey work is done.
Okay, I think no more question is there.
And I think somebody has raised a hand.
No.
No?
By mistakenly it has done.
Okay.
So now I request Mrs. G.R. Deshpande madam to propose a vote of thanks. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, Deshpande sir. Really, your expert knowledge is helpful for us, and really, we have got many more ideas that how to conduct practical sessions in actual survey work. Okay, I hope in our next session, you will give more knowledge for your case studies, and also participants can get knowledge from your practical, or you can say your experienced knowledge. Okay, so thank you for this session, and all participants, I am also thankful for you. Our next session will get start within short while, that is after 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, be with us, be here only, and thank you, Deshpande sir.
I would just like to answer one question. If any political person came as a client for any unauthorized land like hilltop or hill slope for plotting purpose, what would be our role? If you want a diplomatic answer, you should avoid that. I would say, technically, whatever land is, whatever survey you do, you must understand, even if it is unauthorized or hilltop or hill slope is there, it is not feasible. A plotting, if the plotting is not feasible on such land, then we can't do anything. Honestly speaking, I mean, if the slope is say more than 1:5, how will you plot and how will you sell those plots, and how the person who is buying the plot will construct anything there? So it is just not possible. If you are supposed to make roads for them, it is still not possible for you to make the roads, or it will incur very heavy cost for land development. So you can very well tell him about these practical difficulties or constraints of that particular land. And we are not really concerned whether it is an unauthorized land or authorized land. We never get these things checked before going to survey. We just go to the survey as per the client's requirement, well, what the client has said. And so we always insist the client to be present at the time of survey, because nowadays the survey, whenever the surveyor comes on site, people are get skeptical about it. So we want them to stay there, the client, and explain to the people who comes and ask what we are doing here, and who had told you to do the survey here, so he can take care of those things. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And one more correction, that is next session will get start at 12:45, and please fill your attendance. All participants, attendance link is provided, so please fill attendance and remain present for next session. Thank you.